So wanted to welcome everybody today. This is a fantastic opportunity for us across enterprise architecture in general, and women. I was listening to the earlier presentation you had, Paul, with Wendy, and I think it was, who was it? It was Chris and Linda talking about women in architecture and how eventually, when we're successful, we won't have a women in architecture. We'll just be architecture, which is really inspiring to think about. So let me do a little introduction with you guys today. So today we're going to talk about just women in architecture, but beyond that, just a lot of success that we can have, not just as women, but the success we've made in architecture. I'm Laurie Kelly. I'm the VP of Marketing at Ardoq. I've been in enterprise architecture for 5 years. Before that, I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers for a long time, and definitely have lived and walked in the shoes of some of my panelists here. So I'm going to kick it off to Sharon first to do a quick introduction. Sharon, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'm Sharon Stufflebeme. I'm a managing director at Protiviti. I lead our technology strategy and advisory practice globally in our organization. And a little bit of personal footnote, I've spent about half my career in consulting and about half my career as a practitioner. And most of my career as a practitioner was as a chief information officer. And apologies for the background noise. I've got a 5-month-old in the background. And apologies, I don't quite know how to keep her in 100% quiet, and I don't really want to. So that's me. And I've got a lot of family around. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Sharon. Okay, Dina. I don't see Dina. Is she still here?
Her.
She's coming back. Okay. Well, then we'll move over to Miranda for now, and hopefully Dina will be coming back.
I hope so. Hi, everyone. Miranda Mason. I'm with Slalom Consulting, based in Denver, Colorado. I've been in enterprise architecture for 3 years and been with Slalom for 3 years. Before that, I was with Accenture for 24 years. So very long history of technology consulting. At Slalom, I lead from our global group technology strategy and enterprise architecture. And I would say that when I joined, I'm not an architect by my background, as many of you were, but I worked in IT and technology for many, many years. And I took over the tech strategy and enterprise architecture when I came to Slalom. So I've really upskilled myself and kind of rebranded myself as an enterprise architect over the last 3 years. Nice to meet you all.
That's so great. Thank you, Miranda. Okay, so Paul, is anybody working with Dina to try and get her back in? Okay, well, we will make sure we get an introduction to her, but why are we talking about this today? So I have some stats I wanted to share with you, and I don't think the first ones are going to be too surprising, but the last two I think are surprising. 49% of the workforce today is women. I think we can all nod ahead, and that sounds pretty fair, but also I think a really big win for the past couple decades where we are today. However, 26% of the jobs in technology are held by women. And we've seen that. That's one of the reasons we're having this Women in Architecture. I think it was Linda who said earlier, she is the only female in the room when she is with her team. I think she said she has a team of 500 architects. I doubt all of those are men, but we certainly feel that. But some really great stats that I think are really inspiring to me. 60% of college students are women. I know this. I was just taking my daughter I was on the road show last year, going to all the different colleges. And even one of the more popular ones I've been to, 70% were women. And I'm not sure I really like that at all. That's not really what I want to highlight there, but I want to highlight that women are up and rising. And another stat I want to share is I did a quick Google search this morning on how many people are getting their master's degrees right now. 2 times is the pace of women over men getting master's degrees right now. Women are definitely encouraged and leaning into education, are coming out of school in a different capacity than they were a few decades ago. And that's going to transform where we are in the next decade as well. When we think about new people, like I think about Miranda or Sharon, just in your firms, how many new young employees you're going to have, or the intern bench. I'm sure we're looking for a 50-50 split, but you're going to have some really high quality women coming into the workforce, which is going to change things.
We're definitely seeing that, and just if I reflect back on what I've seen over the years, I think we've got a couple of challenges. I think we've got a pipeline challenge, because all of those women that are in college and getting master's degrees, they're not all going into technology, right? We still have to attract them. And then we have had a retention problem of keeping women. When I first got hired into what is now Accenture, we were about 50-50 women. But when it came to rising up to the partner ranks, we were talking about under 10%. So there's a big drop there that we have had to deal with, where we have to really understand how do we make this more technology oriented career, which does tend to be a bit of what they call a greedy career. How do we make it more feasible, and how do we show people that they can really have a career in this field, and that they don't have to leave?
Yeah, just on that point, and I'm going to hand it over to Dina because we finally have her there. But I also was listening this morning, for those that are continuing through each presentation, that this fear in technology, taking technology jobs, is that you need to know it all. That can hold some back, in the sense that I think women also want to be very confident, and not to say that men aren't, but this was also stated that men have a higher capacity for bluffing or maybe dealing with risk. Women are a little bit less risk adverse. And so we really take a little bit more caution when it comes into choosing what we're going to do in the future. But before I do that, Dina, we are so excited you're back. I know you've been having some trouble with and I feel you, because I think my video is going in and out too, but welcome. Can you give a little bit of introduction?
Sorry, everybody. I keep getting booted out, so hopefully this is stable. My name's Dina O'Donnell. I'm the national leader for enterprise architecture for KPMG in Canada. And if I can just pile on with the question, if you don't mind. So in my experience, when I started a million years ago, there were far more women in technology, I think, computer programmers. And I remember my first job coding literally a million years ago on old 286s. There's a lot of women who were mainframe programmers. And over the years, we've just seen fewer and fewer women in the technical jobs. And I really struggle with this. It's something that I'm very passionate about trying to fix. And, I think there's been a lot of more self-awareness, I think, in the last couple of years about the role that everyone can play around trying to get more women into technical roles and into technical leadership. And so something that's come to me with age is just calling it out when I see it. So, if I see patriarchal behavior, I call it out. And you have to be brave to do that. But I think that that's going to help us hopefully increase the numbers. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about this later.
Yeah, let's dive into it. The first question, I want to step away from gender, because we don't need to talk about gender and everything on this webinar today. And in fact, we'll be doing ourselves a bigger service if we just talk about what we do and how it actually impacts business. So the question I have for you, and Miranda, let's start with you. What's the role of EA to continuously drive transformation efforts? Tell us your perspective. Yeah.
Sure. So as a consultant, we work across many clients, and we're starting to see a shift in IT becoming a true business partner, and instead of more of a back office order taker, and increasing realization that all transformation these days is enabled by technology. So related to enterprise architecture, many companies are realizing how critical enterprise architecture is to support that transformation. And they're seeing challenges with their enterprise architecture capability. Either they don't really have one, or they have a lot of solution architects, but are really missing that strategic layer of architecture and strategy, or their enterprise architecture may not be agile enough to support the business at the speed they want to move at. And also many companies are at an inflection point where they finally have to address that big, ugly legacy tech stack out there. So that's driving a lot of from our perspective, a lot of focus on EA as a business capability and focus on trying to help enterprise architecture modernize and mature to really be that true business partner. And then there is a lot of application rationalization happening, which is core enterprise architecture work.
Yes, absolutely. I was just at a conference last week. I was just thinking about this. I don't know if you guys have been to Barcelona, the Gartner IT Symposium. And I anecdotally, I was just looking around. Enterprise architecture really has a bigger perspective now at IT in that symposium with all the different vendors that are there. In fact, we had so many different conversations, not introducing what enterprise architecture is, but many of the CIOs came up to us and said, okay, tell us why your tool is different than the others. I know I need enterprise architecture and a better discipline around it. Dina, let's head over to you. What do you see as the role of EA in driving transformation efforts?
Well, in my experience with my clients, we often will get involved when it's almost too late. And so it's a good thing in that people recognize that they should have had enterprise architecture as something that helped them strategically at the beginning of some of their large transformations. And so we are, like I say, we clean up on aisle 9. When we get involved, often it's a little bit too late. And so what we find is a lot of businesses are, down their transformation path. They have a very much an IT or a product or a solution focus as opposed to what values is driving for my organization. So, we don't see a distinction between IT strategy and business strategy nowadays. It's just strategy. And so enterprise architects play an important role to help drive that strategy from the business architecture down. The last seminar that we were listening to on the value of business architecture, you really have to tie back what you want your enterprise to look like. First, from a business benefit, and then you can find the IT solutions that will enable it. And so we're finding that the conversations are often getting driven from doing things like app rationalization, or we're getting involved in really large ERP transformations a little bit too late. And we're able to bring the clients up a level to try and time what they're doing and spending all this money on to finding their business value. It seems like common sense, but it still is a lot of our work. And I am finding also, like you, that we are having more conversations with the C-suite about the value of enterprise architecture. It's like we're in a renaissance period now. So we're out of the valley of despair and we're on the upswing.
That's the hype cycle, right? We're up on the upswing. Sharon, what's your perspective?
I'm going to agree with both what Miranda and Dina have said, and I really do think it's the change in enterprise architecture discipline that has moved from really a strong focus on setting standards and technical architecture into lining up with business architecture. I think that has been a huge impact in terms of driving strategy, driving the understanding of business capabilities, and I think that is what's really helping us have this renaissance. And I kind of go back to one of my stories that ties to Dina's, clean up on aisle 9 is I had a client who said, we're taking a cloud first strategy. And as long as, and all decisions were federated. So if it was a finance or an accounting decision about technology, that got to go to the CFO. If it was about sales, it got to go to the sales exec. And what that ended up with is a huge challenge in terms of their architecture, because nothing really ties, nothing really talks to each other. You can't have end-to-end solutions. And the role of enterprise architecture is to be able to see around those corners and say, yeah, I get this tool works this way and it supports this process, but how is it linked to everything else? And that is what I think we have as that secret sauce to that ingredient that the rest of the organization simply doesn't have. They really struggle to see around corners and see the downstream impacts. And I do think that is the role of enterprise architecture, to help the organization see, well, you can do that, but it might not have the right outcome. And let's play that forward. Let's just walk it through and see how that will work. And I think that's a great way we can coach folks to understand those end-to-end solutions so they don't end up with these big transformational initiatives that don't achieve the goals, because they forget that when you're looking at a microcosm, you're actually operating in a full ecosystem.
Sharon, let me ask you a question on that. So we know the work that we're doing is useful. A lot of people don't have the same ability to read or absorb what we're putting together. And maybe this goes to you, Miranda, Dina, and Sharon as well. What is your tactic or tip for how to get out of the EA diagrams to be able to share it with those domain those domain leaders? Dina, you're like, yes, I live this every day.
Yeah, you're giving me a softball about your tool. You're giving me a softball about your tool. So I will tell you that one of the things I started doing before the advent of beautiful tools like Ardoq is I started making really simple diagrams that were not technically correct. But what it did is it had on a page, like give me your application landscape on a page. Let's group it by business capabilities. Let's align it up with the business function that needs it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but let's use this as a dialogue to communicate with the rest of the organization around what do we have? What does it do? How does it fit together? How is it organized? And so, those are simple static diagrams, but that was a huge benefit to every time I went to a new gig and I would tell somebody about this. They'd be like, oh yeah, I had no idea what our technology does. It's amazing how many people just only know this much and don't know the other. So I'm gonna say that, by the way, I'm a huge fan of Ardoq because it takes my static, not accurate, not technically correct diagrams and creates an entire information repository and visualization that makes it so easy to have that dialogue.
Thank you, Sharon. That was kind of you to say. Dina, I just feel like you're bursting to say something here.
So something that I kind of came to, it was an aha moment about 3 years ago. So I've been working in enterprise architecture for a very long time, and architects are very logical people. Here's your design, here's your diagram. Please just go implement this. Like, what's the problem here? And quite often it would fall flat because the key is really changing behavior and people's mindsets. And so I've been working very carefully now with my organizational change management experts. So, here's your target operating model, here's your roadmap, here's your cost estimates, please go do. And, it just never really worked. And so I always start my architecture engagements now with organizational change management people at my side attached at the hip. And we start with, from day one, doing our really deep understanding of stakeholder analysis. And how are we going to engage and communicate with those people? How do we do, change impact assessments? And how do we create change agent networks so that the business really sells themselves on the change? And so we had an experience recently with a client, and our business contact on the organizational change management side, the person that we were working with, she was dead set against what we were going to do. She thought that the organization was just fine the way it was. It had been operating this way for 30 years. We didn't need to touch a thing. And she was supposed to be the ones helping us help them change. And so we had to do so much work even just to get her on board. And then, once you can turn that thinking around, the behavior around to say, hey, this is actually a good thing. And then they start to evangelize that within their own organization. That's been the key to our success lately. And again, it's really understanding the mindset change. So what I've started to tell my clients is that don't confuse a software installation with a transformation or a changing behavior. Those are different things. And if you want to see your efforts and money be successful, you really need to focus on the people side. The diagram in Ardoq, I love it. It's great. I love that it's such a visual tool that allows you to surf your information very quickly. And I actually don't have to spend any more time drawing the diagrams because they're just self-generated, which is really cool. As a bit of a control freak, I find that a little hard to let go of, but it saved a ton of time. So.
And I'll just add my perspective. I think I love both those perspectives, very important, but to help the business see the value of EA, the business architecture and the business capability mapping is very powerful, because if you show them a pattern or you show them a diagram or, like a technical diagram, they're just going to kind of get lost in it. But the ability to tie the technology to the business capabilities, the business outcomes that it's driving, showing how technology does or does not support those value streams, is very powerful, and again can be eye-opening and help the business partners understand how technology is enabling their business capabilities today. Or if it's not, it provides a great blueprint to say, here's specifically where technology is not effectively supporting the business, and here are the things that we can do to address that. It really ties everything to those business outcomes.
Definitely. I feel like I'm going to take a maybe not a direct transition to this next slide, but I think when we talk about the different, let's say, diversity of diagrams you can get out of Ardoq, let's take that to a step further to think about diversity and how it can enhance innovation and creativity in architecture. And note that we're not saying women, we're saying diversity. And this was a great conversation we had as we prepped together. Miranda, maybe you can pick up on this to start. How does diversity enhance innovation and creativity in your mind?
Yeah, I think we'll probably all say the same things here, but diversity in any team, and again, not just women, could be people from different cultural backgrounds, people from different, coming from industry, people from different countries. All of that diversity brings diversity in thought. And specific to women, enterprise architecture is very strategic, and women are wonderful strategic thinkers and are great at digesting and putting together multiple complex pieces, particularly maybe those of us as moms or working moms, we juggle a lot, and it helps building that muscle to be great at enterprise architecture. And then just specifically for diversity in women, we regularly get feedback from clients that they don't see diversity in the room. Not just women, but that the diverse perspectives and ways of thinking and challenging things. And I am seeing more women in technology and enterprise architecture leader roles at our clients. It's really exciting and encouraging, and we need to be able to keep up with our clients and be able to match the diversity that we're seeing there.
Dina or Sharon, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in and completely support everything that Miranda said and add a little thing that kind of ties to some of the statistics that you started out with. Well, diversity is really important across all those dimensions, whether it's in background, functional expertise, ethnicity, geography, all those things are very important. What I do want to make sure that we're thinking about is that diverse folks who come into a highly technical background tend to suffer more from imposter syndrome and tend to feel like they need to be over-prepared. And this is not limited to women, although we talk about it with women a lot. So I think those of us as leaders really need to model that confidence and sufficient preparation without requiring over-preparation. I think it's really important that we think about that and we find ways to understand that that is probably what is going on in the minds of people that we're working with. And we model saying, hey, what do you think about that? Hey, I want to hear what you have to say. One of the diversity things that we tend to, not put enough thoughts into as well as introversion versus extroversion, and really seeking out the thoughts of the introverts in the room. So these are all different dimensions of diversity that I think we need to think about, and some conscious behaviors we as leaders need to not just have them in the room, but invite them to participate in a way that provides, social security, right?
Yeah, and I'll pile on, Miranda and Sharon. I think as architects, we're always thinking about target operating models for businesses, business capabilities, processes, org structure, the whole, all the different domains of architecture. And if we have diverse teams, then the amount of innovation that we can think of increases. Personas, right? Just being able to identify all the different personas within your customer, your client groups. If you've got groupthink going on in your design team, then how are you going to reflect who you're trying to serve, whether it's through public service or whether it's through a private company. And so we really strive to hire people of diverse backgrounds, and we're trying very hard to achieve gender parity. And I'm going to steal a story from Duncan Wardle. He was the chief imagination officer at Walt Disney. and he was leading a workshop trying to design the new theme park that was going to go into China. And so he's very much trying to get people into a creative space where it's safe to share and there's no bad ideas. And they really mean it when Disney does these, sort of innovation workshops. And so he grabbed people from all over Disney that he could find it on hand. And one of them was an Asian cook. And so he asked the group to draw a house because they were trying to design the hotels that they were going to have at the theme park. And, all the North American folks typically drew the box house with the triangle roof and the door and the window at the front, all very square. And the Asian cook drew a steamed basket that you would use for steamed dumplings, because where she was from, that was their traditional dwelling structure. It was like a yurt. And so that was a brilliant idea. And that's how they ended up designing their accommodation at the Chinese theme park. And so if you think about, who from North America is going to draw a dumpling steaming basket as an accommodation idea, right? So we really need to reflect that diversity of thinking. And just as you said, Sharon, we have to make it safe for people to share those sorts of ideas and for us to bring that innovation out in folks. It's super important. And I completely agree, Miranda. We are constantly challenged by our clients. We need to reflect what we're seeing in the room. And in the public sector in Canada, there is a higher percentage of women in technical and leadership roles. And they absolutely call us out on that. And they notice when we do not show up with a diverse team to help them.
That was a wonderful story. Thanks, Dina.
I know. I was going to ask you.
Duncan Wardle's, it's not mine, but it's worth retelling.
Well, when we were having our prep conversations and you said that she drew that, I didn't know that that's actually what they took, but I love that you shared that, because that was going to be my next question to you. What did they go with? And it sounds like this, the steamer is probably.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a couple more questions, and this one I'm actually really excited to ask you guys about. And this is really showcasing your achievements and what you have done, whether you're a woman or a man or say a dog or a cat or an astronaut or a doctor. There's all these achievements that you can be proud of. And so I wanted to just shine a light onto you three amazing women and what you've done. I think about your introductions and what you've shared and you've touched so many different clients, and all the people on the call today are likely architects at a company. Not many of them are architects at consultancies like you are, and where you've been able to lift and understand and apply that in different ways. But, Sharon, let's start with you. I'd love for you to share a project that you're particularly proud of that we could all maybe learn a little bit about and learn from.
Yeah, this is one that kind of speaks a little bit to my risk-taking tendency. I was assigned to or requested if I wanted to sign on to this project where it was implementing an ERP solution for a company that had tried 4 times in the past and failed. So this was try number 5. And, to me, that was a lot of how do we understand why did it not work, and what are we going to do differently, and how can I be a catalyst? And while I feel good about this achievement, I recognize my role was as a catalyst, and we had to have the right other people involved. We had to focus on org change. We had to focus on having the right business architecture to enable that transformation. And one of the things that I love, we ended up implementing a huge transformation for this organization. They were trying to go public, realized they couldn't scale without ERP. So we implemented 15 modules of SAP in 14 months. We also implemented Workday for HR and payroll. We also implemented transportation management all in that time. And one of the things that I think back on the most was the support we had from the executive team and how much we worked together. I remember sitting with the chief operating officer, with him working with his district leaders, basically his regional leaders. And we were talking through how the design was going to work for them and how they were going to be able to do their operations. And he kicked it off by saying, "Hey guys," sorry, they were mostly guys, in oil and gas, go figure. He said, I know you've always heard in your life that there are two things that are certain, and those are death and taxes. Because when you walked into this room, we added a third thing. It was death, taxes, and SAP, which means that we need you here to help us understand how we're going to implement SAP, but not implementing SAP is not on the table. And so that was that leader-led org change that allowed us to really, supplement with all the other, how do we bring people's, minds, win people's hearts and minds and get this done. And it was wildly successful. Company was able to go public. It was a really great experience, but it was an experience of tying all our disciplines in architecture together, tying it with org change, and really having a strong leadership team that was able to do this really risky thing and make it successful.
So Sharon, I think the key to the 5th time working sounded like it was leadership, organizational change, and it sounded like, really following the architectural process. Is that what you would say?
It was really following the required business outcomes and recognizing what we need to do for business outcomes, because this was a very entrepreneurial organization that was used to each district could do anything they wanted in their own way. As long as they were making profit, it was okay. And that doesn't work. It doesn't scale, right? You can't continue to grow an organization without huge amounts of revenue leakage. So it was those components coming together and really tackling them head on. I mean, if we had a design that didn't work for the leadership, they wouldn't have accepted it.
I wonder what they did the 4 times before.
We don't have enough time to talk about it.
Right, I know. Miranda, tell us a little bit about your experience and one of your projects that you're most proud of.
Yeah, I thought a long time to try to come up with a project to highlight, but it's really hard to just pick one. I've been in tech consulting for 27 years, and it's not necessarily one project that stands out, but from a capability perspective, my first couple of years at Slalom, I had a hard time getting people to understand what technology strategy is and enterprise architecture, why it's important. We weren't hearing a lot of demand for it at our clients. And when I joined the global team about a year ago today, I came in with the mission of trying to mature and grow tech strategy and enterprise architecture at Slalom. It is a newer capability. And so in partnership with our markets, we've really seen that renaissance we were talking about earlier of the understanding and also the trends that we're seeing from our clients that I talked about earlier. The demand for enterprise architecture is just crazy. It's unprecedented. And we, enable the markets through seeing these trends. We're able to shape offerings that resonate with our clients. And this has really resulted in, again, that demand for enterprise architecture. So I think, just broadly, I think I'm very proud of how far we've come with enterprise architecture, the demand for it in the markets, the recognition of that demand from our clients. And it's just really accelerated this year, as well as being able to, as a global team, wrap around our markets and be able to support them in growing and shaping more tech strategy and enterprise architecture offerings.
Yeah, with that, busyness also becomes busyness in your calendar too, right? So you have a lot of pressures on that. How do you manage work-life balance with all that, Miranda?
That came out of the blue.
I know, that's because I'm so curious as myself. I'm just.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's kind of to the point where my days are completely packed with meetings, and I do have to spend some time in the evenings and weekends catching up with everything. But it's a better problem to have than no demand and having people on the bench. And so, I'm good with it right now and continuing to grow my team. My team is awesome. Continuing to grow the team to be able to better support all of the demand and enable me to continue to focus strategically. And I do definitely focus on self-care. Every Saturday is my bath night. I try to end my work by, a reasonable hour each evening so I can have some time to relax and wind down. But yeah, try to keep that balance as much as possible.
So I'm hearing baths on Saturday night. I'm hearing delegation and great talent, which we'll get into in a little bit. Dina, tell us something, in your career that really was defining for you.
So I've got two answers for this, one short one and one long one. So the short one is I was fortunate enough when I joined KPMG to spend quite a few years in the US helping implement the Affordable Care Act at the state level. I know, there's a lot of press and case studies on what went wrong with it, but it quite often went right. And so that was really meaningful to be able to see some people get signed up for healthcare insurance for the first time in their lives. That was really rewarding. And reflecting back on my career, and it's been a fairly long one. I started off as a programmer a million years ago and worked my way into business analysis because I was a terrible programmer, but I have done it. And so I had an engagement with a client, and they wanted me to come in and do all their requirements. They were implementing a new piece of legislation. They needed a system to support it. And so I worked with a client for probably about 6 months, documenting all their business requirements, drawing process model workflows, data models for database design, wireframes for screens, the whole 9 yards. And we built this amazing requirements document. And then they turned around and implemented, they purchased a COTS product. And so the first thing that the systems integrator did when they arrived on the scene, and it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, they picked up the requirements document, they threw it in the trash, and they said, well, you're buying this out of the box, right? Like that's very cute and all, but that's not what we're doing here. And so I learned a really valuable lesson from that, because I don't want to see it as a waste of time. It wasn't, but it taught me so much. Often our failures teach us the most. And it was just about understanding the context of what we're doing and making sure, obviously, that it's driving some business value. And so I've always tried to keep that in mind with them when I'm with a client. And I think, Miranda, it was yourself earlier mentioned about letting go of the theory of enterprise architecture and building the models that will communicate the best with the business. Was that you, or was that Sharon? And it was, one of the things that you have to understand about architecture is there is a right way to do things. Like, a lot of the notations will enforce business rules for a reason, and it's a really good reason. And you have to understand all that theory, but then you need to know when to ignore it and break the rules so that you can use it as an effective communication tool with your client. So I think that taught me a lot about making sure that I know with every engagement I have with the client what's best going to serve them. And sometimes it's not even what they've asked for. So
that's great. I love it. Breaking the rules or stepping back. I think that always comes back to diversity of thought too, those different perspectives. All right, big money question here. And if we can solve this, we'll make a lot of money. But we can do a lot. When we've had some nice conversations before we even got on this webinar today about how we can all help progress more women into tech leadership roles. I personally have a love-hate relationship with the Lean In book, and Sharon from Facebook at the time. I can't remember her last name, but she was really encouraging or demanding women to lean in. And I wrestled with that. I'm a mom of two. They're now 18 and 16. And I always felt, and this kind of goes back to you, Sharon, I think earlier, how women fall out of the workforce. But, I stuck with it, and I feel really good about the way I am as a mom and the way I progressed as a professional. So just laying a little bit of my soul to everybody on the call today and the webinar, that there's a lot of pros and cons, benefits that we get from the working, but there's also ways we can help support each other. And that's one of the reasons I put this quote in here too, right? I always believe that one woman's success can only help another woman's success. And that's one element of success. But we're here to support each other. And Dina, let's go to you. What are some of your ideas about how we can create more of an environment for women to take on, not only coming into tech, but tech leadership roles?
Yeah, no, and it's super important. You can't be what you can't see, right? And so when I was offered my partnership with KPMG, I really had to think about it, because I wasn't sure that this was actually the life I wanted. But I had been a very squeaky wheel at the firm about why are there no women leadership roles for technology, right? Why is it all an old men's club? And so I had to accept it so I could be, an example to others. And so I've really wrestled with this. So we understand at our firm, and I think this is true at all the big four firms from the research that's been done, that women outperform men across the board at every job level. And we lose a lot of women at the manager level because it's generally when they start their families. And so I've been struggling with, how do we support women through that part of their life so that they can come back, not lose any ground on where they were when they left? And how can we support them? Because despite the fact that, we'd like to think that there's more equality in the home around who actually does the work, it's not true still. Women take on the majority of the work to support raising their children. So I've been working with a group of managers and senior managers, female future leaders in our firm, to help understand, how do we support you and transition you into those leadership roles? And the biggest thing that I found we can help them with is to help them maintain and grow their network when they come back. And so as a partner, there is absolutely zero reason why I can't bring 2 or 3 women with me when I go and meet a client, every single client engagement. Bring those women so they can get their network back. When they return to work, they don't have time to go play golf on the weekends, or go play squash at night, or go to client breakfast at 7 o'clock in the morning, because they're generally, having to put in like 8 to 5 hours. So it's not that we don't see men supporting the women at home in the role, but from what we've been told and the data we have, we know that women still take on the majority of the burden of raising their kids. So that's something I can do to help my women managers, is mentor them to make sure that they understand there's a path of success. This is what it's going to look like for you. Everyone is going to be different. And how do we support you in doing that? Turning the men into allies has also been very important in our firm. And they're becoming very self-aware in the last, I'd say in the last 4 years, I've seen an immense change in how much allyship we're getting from the male partners in our firm. And the last thing I'll go on, because this is really important to me, is that working for a firm like KPMG, there's an incredibly high bar to get in. Like we have the best of the best working for us. But when I'm hiring, that doesn't mean if I have 10 applicants and I have one position that I have to take the best applicant. If you're above our bar, then you're outstanding already. And I will always pick a woman or someone of diversity over a white guy. I'm sorry to say it. And I know that might seem unfair, but that's the only way we really can change the gender mix, the racial mix, the background of diversity that we need in our workforce, is to hire. And when I first started in my career 30 years ago, I was in my early 20s, and I thought, oh, I don't want any special treatment. I'll get there on my own. It's all about, my capabilities. And so I really shied away from having any association with getting special treatment because I was a woman. But now that I've got 30 years into my career, and I've actually seen us slide backwards with the number of women in technology as opposed to progress, I have had to change my thinking. I don't think it's that you get special treatment. It's that there's a bar. You have to be above this height to ride get on the ride. And if you are, then you're already outstanding, and I'm going to hire you. So I would really encourage men and women in leadership roles, when you're hiring, to try and take that lens, because it's really the only way we're going to change things. Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you. That's part 2. Sharon, share with us your perspective about how you're supporting.
I'll share a little bit of my history, my background, to kind of give you some context. But I got married young, and I had kids really young. And as I said, I started my career with what is now Accenture. So what is definitely a very greedy job. And so I was that little snowflake, just like Dina, that said I didn't want special treatment. I just wanted to do my job and it would be fine. And it was. But I will tell you that what I see now after my extensive years, we're not using numbers here, but after my extensive years, what I find is we also have to give the opportunities and for men to be complete parents, and for them to be completely involved in their family, and not just accept that, hey, the trend is that women do all the work. I think we have to say and this has made a huge difference. I was with an organization that was very male dominated. They decided to go ahead and give 8 weeks of parental leave to the men, and all of the all of the gentlemen executives that are working with me were just freaking out. Like, how are we going to have our projects done when all these men are leaving and going and having babies? It's like, well, we've been dealing with this for a little bit longer than you. So I think we can probably manage through this. I don't think it's an insolvable problem, but it made a huge difference. It made a huge difference in that women see that this is an equal parent thing. And this is not just special treatment for me as a mom, that the men, and I see this with our team and with our folks, because we're very close with our team. I see this with men telling me, hey, I can't make an 8 o'clock meeting today because on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I take my kids to school. And I'm like, great, let's do it at 9, right? And so I think it's really being able to make it safe for men to share that family commitment. And for us to honor those commitments is something that's going to keep more women in the workplace. So that's just my belief and my hypothesis, that we have to address it not just by addressing women, got to address it by addressing by men as well.
I love the way you took that. It makes a whole lot of sense. And I know that the consulting firms are leaders in really getting equal parental time off. Miranda, how is it? What are you looking to do to progress more women into tech leadership roles?
I totally agree with everything that Dina and Sharon said, and particularly in consulting, as people go up the ranks, it is at the leader level where the gender balance gets off track, because that is when women want to focus more on their family than their career, and they don't see how they can be a leader in a consulting company and find work-life balance. So just some other thoughts on this. One is for us to be good role models and show that we are taking care of ourselves. We are setting boundaries as well. So just showing that it can be done, and showing that we're not just workaholics working all the time. And then from a mentorship perspective, really ensuring that up and coming women leaders have a good mentor, and that we're focused on encouraging them to set boundaries, to take care of themselves, find that self-care, support work-life balance for them, so that they can see a trajectory. And then the gender balance is much better at the younger, generally people coming into the workforce are more like 50-50 in technology, starts to drop off as you go up. And I'm a big fan of bringing in consultants into the team who aren't necessarily deep in technology or enterprise architecture, but they're eager to learn, they're curious, they're amazing, just go-getters, and pairing them with a more senior person on projects so that they learn as they go. And then just before you know it, they're, experts in these fields. And I'll just give one example of a woman on my team. I don't know if she's on the call today, consultant, came in with more like an AI ML background, but wanted to lean into tech strategy and learn it. She's crushed every project that she's been on. She just completed basically an enterprise architecture project with a fairly weak enterprise architect, and ended up kind of guiding his work and leading him and telling him what to do. She's also working on getting certified in Ardoq. So she's an up and coming leader. So we can also groom that younger generation and help demystify what it means to be an enterprise architect or a technologist, and make it more tangible, and then help bring them up from the ranks.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Miranda, can I pile on for a second? I really want to pick up on something you said about setting boundaries. So, and I know this is the hardest thing in the world, but I really encourage everyone in my team that when they have to disconnect, so take your vacation and use it, and delete your profile off your phone so you can't look at your email, you don't get Teams notifications. And I love what you said about setting the example. We have to lead by example. And so last 2 years, our firm has gone to a 4-day work week in the summertime. And, as leaders, we all just assumed that didn't apply to us, and then thought about it and thought, well, the staff is going to feel like they have to work too on Fridays if they see me doing it. So Fridays, I took every Friday off, didn't answer an email, had an out of office message, led by example, and then everyone felt comfortable actually taking the time off. And so this September, I planned a month-long vacation. I used all my vacation, deleted the profile off my phone. I didn't answer emails. People knew if it was an emergency, screaming on fire emergency, they could phone me. and no one did, and nothing, no one died. And it's, so it takes, you have to be kind of brave to do that, but the mental break it gave to me, and just the, the mental health benefits of it, being able to do that, it was so immense. So I think as women leaders, we really do need to set the example to do that, and that it's okay. And it's okay to have boundaries. Like, I'm picking my kids up from school. I'm sorry, I can't do this because I have a commitment tonight. People need to see that. It's so important.
I love that. Thank you, Dina, for sharing that. Miranda and Sharon, really appreciate it. Everybody who's watching us today, we're all into QR codes these days. I thought you guys would get a smile. I've gave you guys your own LinkedIn QR codes to your profiles. So please connect with us. We would love to continue the conversation. Paul, if you're still there, if there's any questions, I know we have a few minutes left. Let us know.
Yeah, what a great panel. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. It was it's interesting. I've moved to Europe, and there's a number of, and we work a lot in Sweden and a lot in other Scandinavian countries, where the male support or the support for males in parenting is equal, is effectively equal, and it's a ridiculous number. It's like, I want to say it's 6 months.
It's 35 weeks.
It's 35 weeks. Yeah.
It's 35 weeks that must be taken in the first year of the baby's life.
Absolutely.
I happen to have a Danish son-in-law.
And so what a great insight. And mentoring, of course, at ISO, we're horribly passionate about mentoring and systematizing mentoring. So even across and outside of. So I know that that's our biggest request right now. So I do hope that you will support WIA in external mentoring and leading, women that come from outside of the consulting business. Maybe they work for, another kind of company, because this is an amazing panel. And obviously there's a lot of people that want to learn. This is the time, by the way, for everybody, if you want to ask a question. This is a hard group of people to get on the phone. So definitely ask your questions now about architecture and enterprise architecture, or about the programs that they've seen. Obviously, a lot of experience in making diversity work better here. So if anybody would like to ask about that. One of the things I was going to ask, is this a pure architecture question? How are you creating the full architecture practices, in the sense of all the types? A lot of people talk about enterprise architecture, but then they forget that's 30 people out of a 200-person team of architects. How do you integrate across those? We heard from business architects beforehand. You were talking about leaning an EA team more left towards business architecture. What do you see about the future of solution architecture, business information? How do we get those architecture? How are you getting those architecture practices together to kind of work more holistically?
I'll tell you what our approach is at Protiviti, and that is, it's through radical collaboration. Our tech strategy and enterprise architecture practice is going to be, compared to other disciplines in our organization, is going to be small. It is going to be top heavy with people with greater levels of experience. That's just the nature of the beast that we've got. And so for us, it's with really radical collaboration across all of our other disciplines. And we're not just a technology firm. So it's radical collaboration with our business performance improvement practice. It's radical collaboration with our digital transformation business. It's radical collaboration with our risk and compliance, because what we find is, as Miranda so aptly put, enterprise architecture is part of, and technology is part of every solution. And we can add value to every solution without duplicating what they're doing. And so that's really our approach to growing the practice. It's really growing through showing value and growing through helping our other practices succeed and drive better solutions for our clients.
Yeah, I love that. I'll just add that, yes, enterprise architecture is one layer of architecture. There's going to be business architects, application, infrastructure, data security architects, and really having a good clarity around the roles and responsibilities of each of those and having a good operating model of how they collaborate together to support the business through technology.
And if we have a second, I'll just finish finish piling on again. One of the trends I've noticed, and you know, 10 years ago, you didn't even want to use the word enterprise architecture because people thought it was a white tower, ivory, navel gazing 2-year exercise to build models no one would look at and use. And it's gotten sexy again, thank God. Like I said, we're out of the valley of despair now. And I find whether you call it enterprise architecture or technology architecture, solution architecture, we all kind of have a different mental model about what that means and what we do. But at the end of the day, what I find works best is take, if you have the benefit of it, a strategy down approach so that you're always looking what the business needs, what that looks like. How do I align my IT work to that? And then, that always gives you real clarity. And so without even using the words architect, I just try and get everybody on the same page about that's the important part of the approach, and it gives us a good outcome. So there's a lot of namespace collision, I think, these days with the word architecture, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. So
thank you so much to the panel. Thank you, Ardoq, for the continued support for Built. I really hope to see all of you in the WIA Mighty Network as a part of our coaching circles, as a part of the leadership, and helping the leadership of WIA, taking over the leadership of programs and things inside of WIA as that extends internationally. I just can't imagine a better group of leaders. Laurie, thank you again for the ongoing support.